This presentation will cover how to draw with layers. So picking up where the last demonstration left off, we'll continue with the layers that we created in that demonstration and use them to actually draw some objects on the screen. The fastest way to change from one layer to the next is using the layer drop-down box. Currently I'm in layer 0. That is the default layer with every drawing. I'm going to switch to the lines layer, go to line, and I'm going to use the line command to draw some lines on the screen. Notice that when I draw them, they're yellow because they're drawn in the lines layer. Whatever the current layer is, any new objects that are drawn will become that layer using a draw command. Hit enter. Now can I draw other objects in the lines layer? Absolutely. I can draw circles, I can draw arcs, rectangles. I can draw any entity, and whatever I draw using the draw command, it will be drawn in that layer. I'm going to switch layers to circles. I'll draw a couple circles. Let's say a 0.5 radius. Enter to repeat. Another 0.5 radius. So I've got a couple circles in there. Let's draw some center lines. I switch to center, and I'm going to draw lines from quadrant to quadrant. Enter, and quadrant to quadrant. Enter for center lines, and some hidden lines. Let's switch to hidden and draw a line across the bottom of the screen. Enter. And notice the line at the bottom of the screen has some small dashes to it. One thing you should know when utilizing or drawing with layers is you set the LT scale to the exact same scale factor as the drawing. So to set LT scale, you simply type in LTS, hit enter. The scale factor is 1. Let's say that I'm going to draw this at a scale of not 1 to 1, but 1 to 2. So the scale factor then would be 2. Enter. Notice the dashes become a little bit larger, to the point that the centerline dashes are non-existent. Okay, so the LT scale adjusts how line types are viewed on the screen, and it's globally. You can't just do it for one specific line weight or line type. I'll show you how to do that with the properties command when we get to that in the next demonstration. So at this point, I'm going to type in LTS, change it back to line type scale of 1. So for instance, ½ inch equals a foot is 24, ¼ inch equals a foot is 48, and so forth. So always set the line type scale, or LTS, to be the exact same as what you determine the scale factor to be for that drawing. You know, the other things about layers is using the drop-down box. What if you want to turn a layer off? Like I can turn the center lines off. I simply click the off button, click anywhere out on the screen, and notice over here my center lines have disappeared off the screen. To get them back on, I click the drop-down, turn them back on, turn the light bulb on, click anywhere on the screen, and they come back onto the screen. Hit escape. I'm going to go back up here. What if you freeze the circles? Click somewhere in the drawing, and the 2 circles in the circles layer disappeared. But notice the circle that was in the lines layer does not disappear. So again, freeze, thaw, and on and off will virtually give you the same results. Like I said in my previous demonstration, in the background I prefer using the freeze and thaw versus on and off. We're going to skip over viewports right now because that comes later with paper space. And then I'm going to turn my hidden line and lock it. Click somewhere on the screen. Notice I try to go to erase. I'm going to try to select that object. I'm going to try to use crossing on that object. There's nothing I can do, and if I hover over that line, notice that I have a small little padlock that shows up on the screen. So it cannot be selected. I hit escape. I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to thaw my circles and unlock my hidden lines and click somewhere on the screen. So to accept or make all the changes in the drop-down box, simply pick somewhere else on your screen. Again, looking at the Layers toolbar, I'm going to take and drag it out to the center of my screen so you see what we're talking about. This is the Layers toolbar, and the Layer Properties Manager is on the far left. That's where you create and manage your layers. I'm going to click OK to make it go away. The drop-down box is what we've been using to turn things on or off, freeze and thaw, freeze and viewports, lock or unlock, simply the color, which cannot be changed here. You'd have to go to the Layer Manager to do that, and the name of the layer. So that's all in the drop-down box. I'm going to go over here to the right side where it says Make Objects Layer Current. So if I click on that and go out and select something, notice that Hidden is currently the current layer. I'm going to select a line. Now notice up here in the drop-down box, that line is the current layer. So all that does is if you're not sure the name of some object on the screen, but you want to draw in that layer, you click on Make that object a current layer, and that will change the current layer to be that layer. And the last one is Layer Previous. Layer previous is kind of like the undo of layers. If you click on it, it'll just undo the last step that you've done with layers in a layer drop-down box. So clicking on it, it goes back to the last layer that was current. So hidden was current before that. If I undo again, it undoes the last thing for layers, the locking and unlocking. So it's kind of like the undo for layers. So those are the 4 things that are identified on the Layers toolbar. I'm going to drag it back up and plop it into place. So that should give you a basic idea of how to draw with layers. Anytime that you have the current layer set, I'll switch it to lines, and if I draw a line, it's going to draw it in that layer. Turn my dynamic off. It's going to draw it in that layer. Now here's something to keep in mind. We've always been using draw commands, and when you use draw commands, it will draw the new entities in whatever layer happens to be current. So let's copy something. If I go to copy, and I select the hidden line at the bottom of the screen, hit enter, and I make a copy of that, enter. Notice the copy is also a hidden line in the hidden layer. Even though if you look up at the top, the lines is the current layer. So modify commands will not pay attention to whatever the current layer is because it's going to make copies or duplicates of objects already created on the screen in some other layer. So copy, mirror, offset, array, all those commands create something new, and it's going to be created in whatever the current layer is for that entity that you're modifying, not what happens to be current up on the drop-down box. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. Go ahead and practice these, kind of doodle around. If you have any questions, be sure to contact me. Otherwise, this will conclude the presentation for drawing with layers.